The attack dog's jaws were still slick with blood when it lunged at the surgeon's throat. Dr. Marcus Vance stumbled backward, hitting the crash cart, instruments clattering across the tile. The animal, 90 pounds of trained German shepherd, stood over the gurney where a 17-year-old girl lay dying, her chest rising in shallow gasps. 4 nurses had already backed into the corner. 2 residents were pressed against the supply cabinet. No one moved. No one breathed. And then a voice cut through the chaos. 2 words. Quiet. Precise. The dog dropped to the floor like someone had flipped a switch. Everyone turned. The woman standing at the foot of the bed wasn't even looking at them. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her hair tied back in a messy bun. Name tag, Claire Hayes, RN. She'd been in the room the whole time. No one had noticed. "Get the ultrasound," she said. Vance stared at her. "What did you just—" "She's bleeding internally. You have maybe 4 minutes." If you want to see how a nurse no one respected became the only person who could stop what's coming, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city so I know how far this story travels. The girl had come in 20 minutes ago on a stretcher, unconscious, a gash across her temple still leaking onto the backboard. Paramedics said she'd been thrown from a vehicle during a high-speed crash on the outskirts of Riverside. No ID, no passengers, just her and the dog, which had refused to leave her side even when the EMTs tried to load her into the ambulance. Claire had been restocking glove boxes in Trauma Bay 3 when they rolled her in. She'd glanced up, noted the pale skin, the labored breathing, the way the girl's fingers twitched even though her eyes stayed shut, and then stepped aside as Dr. Vance swept in with his usual entourage. "Probable concussion, possible spinal involvement," he announced to the 2 residents trailing him. "Start with a CT, then we'll assess for—" The dog had growled, not loud, just a low rumble from the corner where it had planted itself beside the gurney. Vance stopped mid-sentence. "Someone get that animal out of here." Security had tried. The dog didn't move. It didn't bark. It just watched them with eyes that looked disturbingly intelligent. And when the guard reached for its collar, it snapped, fast enough that the man jerked his hand back and swore. "Call animal control," Vance said, irritated. Claire had kept her distance, watching. The dog wasn't aggressive. It was protecting. There was a difference. She'd seen it before, years ago, in places she didn't talk about anymore. The kind of training you didn't get from a kennel or a weekend obedience class. Vance turned his attention back to the girl. "Let's get her prepped for imaging. I want—" The dog lunged. It happened so fast that Claire barely registered the movement. 1 second, Vance was leaning over the patient, reaching for her wrist. The next, the dog was between them, teeth bared, a sound like tearing metal coming from its throat. Vance fell backward. The residents scattered. A nurse screamed. Claire didn't move. She'd been watching the dog's body language, the way its weight shifted, the tension in its shoulders. It wasn't trying to kill. It was blocking access, which meant it had been trained to do exactly this. "Everyone stop moving," she said. No one listened. Vance was scrambling to his feet, his face red. "Get that thing out of here before I—" "Doctor." Claire's voice was calm, but it carried. "Stop talking." Vance froze. Not because he respected her. He'd barely acknowledged her existence in the 6 months she'd worked at Riverside General, but because something in her tone made him pause. Claire stepped forward, slowly. The dog's eyes tracked her, but it didn't growl. She stopped 3 feet from the gurney. "You're blocking because she's compromised," Claire said, speaking to the dog like it was a person. "I know, but we're trying to help." The animal didn't move. Claire reached into her pocket, pulled out a pair of nitrile gloves, and held them up. "I'm going to touch her now, just to check vitals, that's all." The dog watched her, and then impossibly, it stepped aside. Vance's mouth fell open. "How did you—" "She's tachycardic," Claire said, fingers on the girl's wrist. "Pulse is weak, pupils are reactive but sluggish." She glanced at the monitor. "BP's dropping. She's compensating for something." "We already assessed her," Vance snapped, recovering his composure. "Blunt force trauma, possible concussion. We need imaging before—" "She's bleeding," Claire interrupted. Vance blinked. "What?" "Internally. Look at her abdomen." Claire pulled back the blanket. The girl's midsection was slightly distended, the skin mottled. Vance leaned closer, frowning. "That could be from the impact," he said. "Or it could be a ruptured spleen." Claire's voice was flat. Either way, if you send her to CT right now, she'll code before she gets there. One of the residents cleared his throat. Should we? We're following protocol, Vance said sharply. CT first, then surgery if indicated. Claire met his eyes. She doesn't have time for protocol. The room went silent. Vance's jaw tightened. Nurse Hayes, I don't know what you think you're doing, but I think I'm trying to keep her alive. Claire turned to the nearest resident. Page surgery, tell them we need an OR prepped for exploratory laparotomy, now. The resident looked at Vance. Don't you dare, Vance said. Claire didn't raise her voice. If you're wrong, she dies on your watch. If I'm wrong, I get written up. Your call, doctor. Vance's face went white, then red. You don't have the authority. Then stop me. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the resident pulled out his phone. Vance turned on him. What do you think you're... Paging surgery, the resident said quietly. Vance looked like he'd been slapped. He spun back to Claire, his voice shaking. You just ended your career. Claire didn't answer. She was already pulling on gloves, adjusting the IV line, checking the monitor. The dog sat beside the gurney, calm now, watching her work. BP's dropping faster, one of the nurses said, her voice tight. Get her typed and crossed for 4 units, Claire said, and someone find out if she has family. We don't even know who she is, another nurse muttered. Then look harder. The girl's eyelids fluttered. Her lips moved, soundless. Claire leaned closer. Hey, can you hear me? No response, just a faint tremor in her hand. Stay with us, Claire murmured. You're going to be fine. She didn't know if that was true, but she said it anyway. The OR called back. They'd have a room ready in 8 minutes. Vance stood in the corner, his arms crossed, his expression murderous. This is on you, he said. Claire ignored him. The girl's stats were sliding, heart rate climbing, pressure dropping, classic hemorrhagic shock. Claire had seen it a dozen times before, in field hospitals, in transport choppers, in places where the nearest surgeon was an hour away and you either stopped the bleeding yourself or watched someone die. She'd left that world behind, traded the uniform for scrubs, traded the chaos for routine, traded a call sign for a name tag. But the instincts were still there. She's crashing, one of the nurses said. Claire grabbed the ambu bag. Not yet, she's not. She started bagging, slow, steady compressions, forcing oxygen into the girl's lungs while the monitors screamed. The dog stood, hackles raised, and for a second Claire thought it might attack again. But it didn't. It just watched. OR's ready, the resident called. Move, Claire said. They pushed the gurney into the hallway, IV poles rattling, monitors beeping, the dog trotting alongside like it had done this before. Vance followed, still fuming, but he didn't try to stop them. The elevator took forever. Claire kept bagging. The girl's pulse was thready, barely there. Come on, Claire whispered. Don't quit on me. The doors opened. They sprinted down the corridor, past startled visitors, past orderlies who flattened themselves against the walls. The OR team was waiting, gowned, gloved, ready. Claire transferred the ambu bag to one of the anesthesiologists and stepped back. The girl disappeared through the double doors. The dog tried to follow, but a security guard blocked its path. It sat, stared at the doors, didn't move. Claire stood in the hallway, her scrubs damp with sweat, her hands shaking just slightly. One of the residents came up beside her. You think she'll make it? I don't know. Vance is going to file a complaint. Probably. The resident hesitated. For what it's worth, you were right. Her spleen was ruptured. They're in there now. Claire nodded. She didn't feel vindicated. She just felt tired. How did you know? The resident asked. Claire didn't answer. Because the truth was complicated. And the truth would lead to questions she didn't want to answer. Questions about where she'd learned to read trauma patterns that fast. About why a military-trained attack dog obeyed her without hesitation. About the 2 words she'd spoken, words that didn't exist in any civilian handbook. She'd buried that part of her life, built a new one. Quiet. Unremarkable. Safe. But standing there in the hallway, watching the dog wait for a girl it had been trained to protect, Claire felt the past creeping back in. She turned to the resident. Go check on her stats. I'll be up in a minute. He left. Claire looked at the dog. It looked back. "You're going to be a problem," she said softly. The dog's tail thumped once. Claire was about to head back to the ER when her phone buzzed. A text from the charge nurse. "Vance wants to see you. Supervisor's office. Now." Claire pocketed the phone. Of course he did. She walked back through the maze of corridors, past the cafeteria where the night shift was grabbing coffee, past the radiology wing where techs were changing shifts. Riverside General was a medium-sized facility, big enough to handle major trauma, small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business, which meant that by morning, the entire hospital would know she'd overruled an attending physician. The supervisor's office was on the third floor, tucked between human resources and the administrative wing. The door was open. Vance was already inside, pacing. Claire knocked. "Come in," a woman's voice said. Linda Garrett, the night supervisor, sat behind her desk with the kind of expression that said she'd rather be anywhere else. She was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on her nose. She'd been at Riverside longer than anyone could remember. "Close the door," Garrett said. Claire did. Vance didn't wait. "She countermanded my orders in front of my entire team. She compromised patient care, violated protocol, and—" "The patient is alive," Claire said quietly. Vance spun on her. "Because she got lucky. Because I read the symptoms correctly. You're a nurse, not a diagnostician. And you were about to send a bleeding patient to imaging." Vance's face went dark. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I know what internal hemorrhage looks like." "Oh, really?" Vance crossed his arms. "And where exactly did you learn that? Because it's not in the nursing curriculum." Claire said nothing. Garrett held up a hand. "Both of you, stop." She looked at Claire. "Dr. Vance says you gave an order to prep an OR without his authorization." "I made a judgment call." "That's not your job." "Someone had to make it." Garrett took off her glasses. "Claire, I appreciate your initiative. I do. But there's a chain of command here. You can't just—" "She would have died," Claire interrupted. "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." The room went quiet. Garrett sighed. "The surgery team confirmed a ruptured spleen. You were right, but that doesn't change the fact that you overstepped. So what do you want me to do? Apologize for saving her life?" Vance laughed bitterly. "Unbelievable." Garrett gave him a look, then turned back to Claire. "I'm putting a formal reprimand in your file. One more incident like this, and you're suspended. Understood?" Claire nodded. "And I want a written statement about how you knew to give that command to the dog." Claire's stomach tightened. "What command?" "Don't play dumb," Vance said. "We all heard you. 2 words, and that animal practically saluted." "I just got lucky." "No." Garrett leaned forward. "That wasn't luck. That was training. So either you tell me where you learned it, or I'm escalating this to the director." Claire's mind raced. She could lie. She could deflect. She'd done it before. But the look on Garrett's face said she wasn't buying it. "I used to work with animals," Claire said carefully, "before I went into nursing." "What kind of animals?" "Dogs. Search and rescue." It wasn't entirely a lie. She had worked with dogs. Just not the kind you found at disaster sites. Garrett studied her. "And that's where you learned military commands?" "They're not military. They're just—" "Don't insult my intelligence, Claire." The room fell silent again. Vance was watching her like a predator sizing up prey. Garrett's expression was unreadable. "I think we're done here," Garrett said finally. "Claire, go back to your shift. Dr. Vance, I'll handle the paperwork." Vance started to protest, but Garrett cut him off. "I said I'll handle it." He glared at Claire one more time, then stormed out. Claire turned to follow, but Garrett stopped her. "Wait." Claire paused. Garrett walked around the desk, her arms crossed. "I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen a lot of nurses come and go. Most of them are good. Some are great. But you?" She shook her head. "You're something else." "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Garrett's voice softened. "I don't know what you're running from, Claire, and I don't need to know, but whatever it is, it's going to catch up with you eventually." Claire's throat tightened. "Just be ready when it does," Garrett said. Claire left without another word. By the time she got back to the ER, the adrenaline was wearing off. Her hands were steady, but her chest felt tight. She'd dodged the question. Barely. But it wouldn't be the last time someone asked. The dog was still sitting outside the OR. A security guard stood nearby, looking uncomfortable. "Animal control's on their way," he said when he saw Claire. "Don't let them take him." "What?" "The girl's going to want him when she wakes up." The guard frowned. "I don't think that's—" "Just keep him here until we hear from her family, please." The guard hesitated, then nodded. Claire knelt beside the dog. It looked at her with those sharp, intelligent eyes. "You're going to blow my cover," she murmured. The dog's ears twitched. Claire stood and headed back to the nurse's station. Her shift didn't end for another 4 hours, and she still had a stack of charts to finish. But she couldn't focus. Because Garrett was right. The past was catching up, and Claire had no idea how to stop it. She was halfway through updating a patient file when the elevator doors opened again. 2 men stepped out, both in dark suits, both with the kind of posture that screamed federal. Claire's heart sank. They walked straight toward her. "Nurse Hayes," the taller one said. "Yes? We need to ask you a few questions." "About what?" The man glanced toward the OR. "About the dog." Claire forced herself to stay calm. "I don't know anything about it. It came in with the patient." "That's not what we're asking." The second man pulled out a badge. Department of Defense, Special Investigations. "The command you used." "Where did you learn it?" "I didn't use any—" "Yes, you did." The first man's voice was flat. "That's a classified handler protocol. Tier 1 assets only. So either you're breaking about 15 federal laws, or you're someone we need to have a very different conversation with." Claire said nothing. Behind them, the OR doors swung open. A surgeon emerged, pulling off his gloves. "She's stable," he called. "Spleen's out, bleeding's controlled. She's going to make it." Relief flooded through Claire, but it lasted only a second, because the 2 men were still staring at her, and the dog was still sitting there. And somewhere in the building, Vance was probably already drafting another complaint. The taller agent stepped closer. "We're going to need you to come with us." "I'm still on shift." "Not anymore." Claire looked past him, toward the ER, where her coworkers were probably wondering where she'd gone, where patients were waiting, where the life she'd built was starting to crack. She looked at the dog. It stood, walked over to her, sat at her feet. The agent raised an eyebrow. "Interesting." Claire took a breath. "Am I under arrest?" "Not yet." "Then I'm going back to work." She turned. "Captain Hayes." Claire froze. The second agent held up his phone. On the screen was a photo. Military personnel, desert fatigues, a helicopter in the background. And standing in the center, younger but unmistakable, was Claire. "We've been looking for you for a long time," the agent said quietly. Claire's mouth went dry. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" The agent pocketed his phone. "Because the girl you just saved? Her name is Danny Mercer, and her father is Major General Raymond Mercer. 3 stars, Special Operations Command." The floor seemed to tilt. "He's on his way here right now," the agent continued. "And when he finds out that the person who saved his daughter is a decorated combat pilot who disappeared 6 years ago without explanation." He paused. "Well, I imagine he's going to have questions." Claire couldn't breathe. "So you can come with us voluntarily," the agent said. "Or you can wait here and explain to a 3-star general why you've been hiding in a trauma center under a name that's not even yours." Claire's vision blurred. "Your choice," the agent said, and for the first time in 6 years, Claire realized she didn't have one, because the life she'd built, the quiet, invisible, safe life, was about to shatter, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The elevator dinged again. The doors opened. A man in uniform stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, graying at the temples. His eyes swept the hallway, taking in everything, the agents, the dog, Claire, and then his gaze locked on her. Recognition flashed across his face. "No," he said softly. "Can't be." Claire didn't move. The general walked toward her slowly, like he was seeing a ghost. "Hayes?" His voice cracked. "Evelyn Hayes?" Claire's real name, the one she hadn't heard in years. "I go by Claire now," she said quietly. The general stopped in front of her. His eyes were wet. "We thought you were dead." Claire swallowed. I know. Why? The word came out raw. Why did you leave? Claire didn't answer, because the truth was too complicated, because the missions had broken something inside her, because she'd seen too much, done too much, lost too much, because one day she'd looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. So she'd walked away, changed her name, started over. And now it was all falling apart. The general's jaw tightened. You saved my daughter. Claire nodded. How did you know she was in trouble? I didn't. I just saw the signs. And the dog? Claire glanced at the animal. It recognized the training. You mean it recognized you? Claire said nothing. The general looked at the two agents. Give us the room. They hesitated. Now. The agents left. The general turned back to Claire. I owe you my daughter's life, but you owe me an explanation. I can't. Yes, you can. His voice was hard now. Because 6 years ago, you were one of the best pilots I ever commanded. You flew missions that saved hundreds of lives. You earned a silver star, and then you vanished. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. Claire's throat tightened. I couldn't do it anymore. Do what? Any of it. The general stared at her. So you ran? Yes. And you've been hiding here ever since. I've been trying to help people. You were helping people before. Not like this, Claire's voice broke. Not without killing them. The words hung in the air. The general's expression softened. Evelyn, don't call me that. It's your name. Not anymore. The general sighed. You can't run forever. I know. Then what are you going to do? Claire didn't have an answer. Behind them, the OR doors opened again. A nurse poked her head out. General Mercer? Your daughter's awake. She's asking for you. The general nodded. He looked at Claire one more time. Stay, he said. We're not done. Then he walked into the OR. Claire stood alone in the hallway. The dog was still sitting there. She could leave. Right now. Walk out the door, get in her car, disappear again. But where would she go? And how long before they found her again? She sank into a chair, her legs shaking. The agents reappeared. They didn't say anything. They just stood there, waiting. Claire closed her eyes. She'd spent 6 years trying to forget who she'd been. But the past didn't forget. And now it was here, standing in front of her, demanding answers she didn't know how to give. The OR doors opened. The general emerged. His face was pale. She wants to see you, he said. Claire blinked. What? My daughter. She's asking for the nurse who saved her. Claire stood slowly. I don't think, please. There was something in his voice. Not a command. A request. Claire followed him into the OR. The girl, Danny, was propped up in the recovery bed, pale and groggy, but awake. Tubes and wires snaked from her arms. Her eyes found Claire. You're the one, Danny whispered. Claire stepped closer. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. Close enough. Danny managed a weak smile. Then her expression shifted. Ranger? Where's Ranger? The dog? He's my partner. We were running an op. Something went wrong. Her eyes widened. Is he okay? He's fine. He's right outside. Danny's shoulders sagged with relief. He didn't let anyone touch me, did he? No. Good. That's his job. Claire glanced at the general. His jaw was tight. Danny looked at Claire again. How did you get him to stand down? I just talked to him. No. Danny's voice was stronger now. He's trained to respond to one handler, me, and emergency backup protocols, which means you either knew the override command, she paused, or you're someone he recognized. Claire's heart hammered. Danny's eyes narrowed. Who are you? Claire opened her mouth, closed it. The general stepped forward. Danny, this is Evelyn Hayes, Danny breathed. Oh my God, you're Shadow Lead. Claire felt the room spin. I read about you, Danny continued, her voice full of awe. The Kandahar extraction, the Mosul run, you were a legend. I'm just a nurse, Claire said weakly. No. Danny shook her head.
You're not.
The general put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. We'll talk about this later. Right now, you need to rest. But Danny wasn't listening. She was staring at Claire. Why are you here? Why aren't you? I left, Claire said simply. Why? Claire didn't answer, because the truth was too heavy, too dark. The general squeezed Danny's shoulder. That's enough. Danny's eyes fluttered. The sedatives were kicking in. Thank you, she murmured, for saving me. Claire nodded. The girl's eyes closed. The general gestured for Claire to follow him back outside. In the hallway, he turned to face her. She's going to recover, he said. Thanks to you. I'm glad. But there's something you need to know. His voice dropped. The accident wasn't an accident. Claire's blood ran cold. What? Someone tried to kill her. We don't know who yet, but she was being followed. The vehicle that hit hers wasn't random. Why would someone... Because of me. The general's face was grim. Because of what I know. Because of operations I've overseen. And they went after my daughter to get to me. Claire felt sick. We're running a full investigation, the general continued. But until we know who's behind this, she's not safe. And neither are you. Me? You saved her life, which means whoever did this is going to want to know who you are. And when they find out... He paused. They're going to realize you're not just a nurse. Claire's hands went numb. I need you to come with me, the general said. Protective custody. Until we sort this out. I can't just leave. I have a job, a life. Do you? His voice was gentle but firm. Or have you been hiding? Claire couldn't answer, because he was right. She'd been hiding for 6 years, and now the world had found her anyway. The general's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. We have a problem. What? Security just flagged someone trying to access Danny's medical records. Someone inside the hospital. Claire's stomach dropped. Who? We don't know yet, but they used an administrative override, which means it's someone with clearance. Claire's mind raced. Vance, the general frowned. Who? Dr. Marcus Vance, the attending who was treating Danny. He's been hostile ever since I overruled him. Hostile how? He filed a complaint, demanded to know how I controlled the dog. He was asking questions he shouldn't have been asking. The general's eyes went cold. Where is he now? I don't know. The general pulled out his phone, barked orders to someone on the other end. Within seconds, 2 MPs appeared in the hallway. Find Dr. Marcus Vance, the general said. Bring him to me. Now. The MPs left at a run. Claire's heart pounded. You think he's involved? I think someone's been feeding information to the people who want my daughter dead. And if it's him... The general's jaw clenched. He's going to wish he'd never heard our names. Somewhere in the hospital, an alarm began to sound. The alarm wasn't the fire system. Claire knew that sound, sharp, rhythmic, the kind hospitals used for code situations. This was different, lower, sustained, like a warning that something had already gone wrong. The general's phone rang before the echo faded. He answered without taking his eyes off Claire. Talk to me. His face hardened as he listened. Lock it down. No one in or out until I say so. He hung up. What happened? Claire asked. Someone accessed the pharmacy, pulled enough fentanyl to kill 20 people. He started walking. And the security footage has been wiped. Claire followed him down the corridor, her pulse hammering. You think they're still in the building? I know they are. The general's voice was clipped. Because they just tried to get into Danny's room. Claire's stomach lurched. Is she... She's fine. MPs are with her, but whoever this is, they're not giving up. They turned the corner. 2 MPs stood outside the recovery wing, rifles across their chests. Beyond them, Claire could see nurses being ushered into a break room, their faces tight with confusion. One of the MPs stepped forward. Sir, we have a situation on 3. What kind of situation? Dr. Vance. He's barricaded himself in his office. Won't come out. The general's jaw clenched. Has he said anything? Just that he wants to talk to Nurse Hayes. Every head turned toward Claire. She felt the weight of their stares. Military personnel trained to assess threats, and suddenly she was the variable they couldn't calculate. Why does he want to talk to me? Claire said. That's what we're going to find out. The general nodded to the MPs. Take us to him. They moved through the hospital in formation. 2 MPs in front, the general beside Claire, 2 more behind. Staff members pressed themselves against walls as they passed. A few whispered, most just stared. Claire had spent 6 years blending in, being invisible. Now she felt like a spotlight was burning through her skin. They reached the 3rd floor. Vance's office was at the end of a narrow hallway, door closed. Another MP stood outside, radio in hand. Status? The general asked. He's alone. No weapons that we can see. But he's been on his phone. We don't know who he's talking to. The general looked at Claire. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Because whatever Vance knew, whatever he'd done, Claire was already tangled in it, and the only way out was through. She stepped forward and knocked. Dr. Vance? It's Claire. Silence. Then the lock clicked. The door opened 6 inches. Vance's face appeared in the gap. His hair was disheveled, his tie loose. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Just you, he said. Not happening, the general said. Vance's eyes flicked to him, then back to Claire. Then we don't talk. Claire glanced at the general. He shook his head. I'll be fine, she said quietly. Claire, he's not going to hurt me. She didn't know if that was true, but she said it anyway. The general's expression said he didn't like it, but after a long moment, he stepped back. You have 5 minutes, he said. Then I'm coming in. Claire slipped through the door. Vance closed it behind her, his hand shaking as he turned the lock. The office was small, desk, filing cabinet, a window overlooking the parking lot, medical journals stacked on every surface, a half-empty bottle of scotch sitting next to his computer. Vance didn't sit. He paced. You ruined everything, he said. Claire stayed by the door. I saved a girl's life. You drew attention. You made people ask questions. He laughed bitterly. Do you have any idea what you've done? Why don't you tell me? Vance stopped pacing. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something other than arrogance in his eyes. Fear. They're going to kill me, he whispered. Claire's pulse quickened. Who? I don't know their names. I don't know their faces. I just know what they want. Which is? Access. Vance wiped his mouth. To patients, to records, to pharmaceuticals. They pay well, very well, and all I have to do is look the other way. Claire felt sick. How long has this been going on? 2 years? And you didn't think to tell anyone? Tell them what? Vance's voice cracked. That I'm in debt up to my neck? That I gamble? That I made one mistake and now I'm owned? He shook his head. They have everything on me. Pictures, recordings. If I talk, my career is over. My life is over. So you helped them. I gave them access to files, patient histories, discharge dates, nothing that would hurt anyone. He looked at her desperately. I didn't know they were going to try to kill that girl. Claire's hands clenched. But you suspected. Not until tonight. Not until they told me to pull her chart, to make sure she stayed isolated, to keep her away from anyone who might... He stopped. And then you showed up. And you saved her. And now they know someone's watching. So you tried to access her records. I had to. They told me to confirm her condition, to see who treated her. Vance's voice dropped. And when I saw your name, I knew. Knew what? That you're not just a nurse. He stepped closer. I saw the way you handled that dog. The way you diagnosed her. You've done this before. Trauma. Combat. Which means you're either military or you were. Claire said nothing. So I looked you up, Vance continued. And guess what? Claire Hayes doesn't exist. Not before 6 years ago. No nursing school records. No employment history. Nothing. He laughed. You're a ghost. What did you tell them? Nothing. Yet. Vance's eyes were wild now. But they're going to ask. And when they do, I either give them your name or they kill me. Claire's mind raced. If Vance talked, whoever was behind this would know exactly who she was. And if they knew, they'd come after her. Not just because she'd saved Danny, but because she was a liability. Someone who could identify patterns, connect dots. Someone who'd done this kind of work before. You need to turn yourself in, Claire said. To who? The police? The feds? You think they're not already compromised? Vance shook his head. These people have reach, money, connections. The second I open my mouth, I'm dead. Then what do you want from me? Vance stared at her. I want you to disappear. Again. Take whatever identity you're hiding under and vanish. Because if you stay, they're going to find out who you are. And when they do, they'll use you to get to that girl. And her father, and everyone else you care about. Claire's throat tightened. I'm not running. Then you're stupid. Maybe. Claire stepped toward the door. But at least I'm not a coward. Vance flinched like she'd slapped him. Claire unlocked the door. The general was waiting outside, his expression grim. We're done here, Claire said. The general gestured to the MPs. Take him. They moved into the office. Vance didn't resist. He just stood there, shoulders slumped, as they cuffed him. You're making a mistake, he said, as they led him past Claire. She didn't answer. Because maybe he was right. Maybe staying was stupid. Maybe she should have run the second the agents showed up. But she was tired of running. The general fell into step beside her as they walked back toward the recovery wing. What did he say? Claire told him. All of it, the debt, the access, the people pulling his strings. The general's face darkened with every word. We need to move Danny, he said when she finished. Tonight, somewhere secure. Where? Fort Hamilton. It's 40 minutes from here. Full medical staff, controlled access. He glanced at her. And I want you to come with us. Claire stopped walking. Why? Because you're a target now, whether you like it or not. I'm not military anymore. You were never just military. The general's voice softened. You were one of the best pilots we had. You flew missions no one else would touch. You saved lives that no one else could save. And now you've saved my daughter. He paused. I'm not letting you walk away from this unprotected. Claire looked at him, really looked at him. The lines around his eyes, the weight on his shoulders, the fear he was trying to hide. What aren't you telling me? She asked. The general hesitated. Then he pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. It was grainy, taken from a security camera. But Claire recognized the location immediately. The hospital parking lot, and the man walking toward the entrance. Tall, dark coat, face obscured by a hood. But Claire knew that walk, the way he moved, controlled, efficient, like someone who'd been trained to kill. He arrived an hour ago, the general said. Used a stolen badge to get past the front desk. Security lost him on the second floor. Claire's blood ran cold. He's here for Danny. We think so, but we don't know where he is. The general's jaw tightened, which is why we're moving her now. They turned the corner and froze. The MPs outside Danny's room were on the ground, not moving. The general pulled his sidearm and ran. Claire followed, her heart in her throat. The door to Danny's room was open. Inside, the bed was empty. IV lines hung loose, monitors beeped uselessly. The window was open. The general rushed to it, looked down. There, Claire joined him. 3 stories below, a black van idled in the emergency bay. 2 figures were loading something into the back. Someone small, unconscious. Danny. The general was already on his radio. Code black, patient abduction, south entrance, lock down the perimeter. But Claire wasn't listening because she'd seen something else. The dog. Ranger. He was outside, running toward the van, barking furiously, and then one of the men turned, raised a gun, fired. The dog dropped. Claire's vision went red. She didn't think. She just moved. Out of the room, down the hallway, past nurses and orderlies and people shouting questions she didn't hear. She hit the stairwell at a run, taking the steps 3 at a time. By the time she reached the ground floor, her lungs were burning. She burst through the exit door into the night air. The van was pulling away. Ranger was lying on the pavement, blood pooling beneath him. Claire ran to him, dropped to her knees. He was still breathing, shallow, rapid. Hold on, she whispered. Behind her, the general emerged from the building, MPS pouring out after him. They're heading east, someone shouted. The general barked orders into his radio. I want every unit between here and the state line. Set up roadblocks. No one gets through. But Claire wasn't listening because Ranger's eyes were on her, and she could see it in his gaze. He'd tried to protect Danny, and he'd failed, just like Claire had. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The dog's breathing hitched, and then impossibly, he tried to stand. Claire held him down. "Don't, you're hurt." But Ranger didn't stop. He pushed against her hands, his legs shaking, his body trembling with effort. And then he was on his feet, swaying, bleeding, but standing. He looked at Claire, and she understood. He wasn't giving up. Neither could she. Claire stood, turned to the general. "I need a vehicle." "What?" "A vehicle. Now." The general stared at her. "Claire, you're not— They have your daughter." Claire's voice was steel. "And that dog is the only one who can track her." "He's been shot." "I know. He needs medical attention." "So does Danny." The general's face twisted. "I can't let you— You don't have a choice." Claire stepped closer. "Your people don't know this city. They don't know how these operators think. But I do." She paused. "And if you want your daughter back alive, you're going to have to trust me." For a long moment, the general said nothing. Then he pulled keys from his pocket. "My car, north lot." Claire took them. "There's a trauma kit in the trunk," the general added, "and a radio on channel 7. Claire nodded. She turned to Ranger. "Come on, boy." The dog limped after her. They reached the parking lot. The general's car was a black SUV, government plates. Claire opened the back door. Ranger jumped in, whining. Claire grabbed the trauma kit from the trunk, climbed into the back seat, and went to work. The bullet had gone through Ranger's shoulder. Clean entry, clean exit. Lots of blood, but nothing vital hit. She packed the wound, wrapped it tight, gave him a shot of antibiotics from the kit. Ranger's eyes never left her face. "You're tougher than you look," Claire murmured. The dog's tail thumped weakly. Claire climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine. The radio crackled. The general's voice. "Claire, what's your position?" She grabbed the handset. "North lot, heading out now." "Where are you going?" "To find them." "How?" Claire looked in the rearview mirror. Ranger was sitting up now, his nose twitching. "I have a tracker," Claire said. She hung up before the general could argue. Then she put the car in gear and drove. Ranger's head was up, his ears forward. He was scenting the air, even through the closed windows. Claire rolled down the back window. Cold night air rushed in. Ranger's body went tense, and then he barked. Once. Sharp. Claire turned left out of the lot, following instinct as much as logic. The van had a head start, but they'd be sticking to side roads, avoiding cameras, which meant they'd be moving slower. Claire pushed the SUV to 60, weaving through late-night traffic. Ranger barked again. Claire turned right. She didn't know where they were going, but the dog did, and she trusted him more than she trusted herself. They drove for 10 minutes, through neighborhoods, past shuttered businesses, under flickering streetlights. And then Ranger went wild, barking, clawing at the window. Claire slammed the brakes. Ahead, parked in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse, was the van. Empty. Claire killed the engine. Grabbed the radio. "I found the van. East Industrial. Warehouse District." The general's voice came back immediately. "Do not engage. Wait for backup." Claire dropped the radio. She opened the back door. Ranger jumped out, limping but determined. Together, they approached the warehouse. The door was ajar. Light spilled from inside. Claire could hear voices. Low. Tense. She pressed herself against the wall, listening. "Don't care what your orders are. We were supposed to extract her clean. No witnesses. No noise." "There was a dog." "So you shot it in front of a hospital. What was I supposed to do?" "Not leave a trail." Claire's pulse hammered. There were at least 2 of them, maybe more. She needed a weapon. She looked around, spotted a length of pipe near the dumpster. It would have to do. She picked it up, tested the weight. Ranger growled softly. Claire looked at him. "Quiet." The dog went silent. Claire edged toward the door. Inside, she could see a large open space, concrete floor, metal shelving, crates stacked along the walls. And in the center, tied to a chair, was Danny. Alive. Conscious. Bleeding from a cut above her eye. 2 men stood nearby. One was tall, muscular, military haircut. The other was leaner, older, scars on his hands. "The general's not going to negotiate," the scarred one said. "He doesn't negotiate." "Then what do we do?" "We send a message." The muscular one pulled a knife. Claire's grip tightened on the pipe. She could rush them, maybe take one down before the other reacted. But Danny was in the line of fire, and Claire was unarmed except for a piece of metal. She needed an advantage. Ranger was watching her, waiting. And then Claire remembered. The override command. The one she'd used in the hospital. It wasn't just for standing down. It was for attack. Claire looked at Ranger, met his eyes, and spoke. 2 words. Quiet. Precise. Ranger's body coiled, and then he exploded through the door. The men spun, surprised. Ranger hit the muscular one in the chest, knocking him backward. The knife clattered across the floor. The scarred one reached for his gun. Claire was already moving. She swung the pipe, caught him across the wrist. Bone cracked. He screamed. She swung again, hit him in the temple. He dropped. Behind her, Ranger had the muscular one pinned, teeth locked on his arm. Claire grabbed the knife, cut Danny's restraints. "Can you walk?" Danny nodded, her face pale. "Then move!" They ran for the door. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Backup was coming, but they weren't there yet. Claire shoved Danny toward the SUV. "Get in!" The girl stumbled, caught herself, climbed into the passenger seat. Claire turned back. "Ranger?" The dog released the man and bolted toward her. And then the warehouse door burst open. The scarred one staggered out, blood streaming down his face. And he had his gun. He raised it, aimed at Danny. Claire didn't think. She threw herself in front of the SUV. The shot rang out. Pain exploded in her side. She hit the ground hard, the world spinning. Ranger's barking sounded far away. Footsteps. Running. More gunfire. And then voices. Shouting. Military. Claire's vision blurred. She tried to breathe, couldn't. Someone was kneeling beside her. The general, his face tight with fear. "Stay with me, Hayes." She tried to answer, couldn't. Her eyes found Danny. The girl was crying. Safe. That was enough. Claire's vision went dark, and the last thing she heard was the general's voice, breaking. "Don't you dare die on me!" The darkness wasn't peaceful. It was loud, full of voices she couldn't place and pain she couldn't escape. Claire tried to surface, tried to claw her way back to consciousness, but her body wouldn't respond. Somewhere distant, she heard the rhythmic beep of monitors, felt pressure on her chest, tasted copper, then nothing. When she opened her eyes, the light was too bright. White ceiling tiles, the smell of antiseptic. Her side felt like someone had driven a railroad spike through it and left it there. She tried to sit up. A hand pressed her shoulder down. "Don't." The general. He looked worse than she felt, uniform rumpled, eyes bloodshot, jaw shadowed with stubble. "Danny," Claire croaked. "She's fine. Thanks to you." Claire's throat burned. "Ranger?" "Surgery. They're optimistic." The general pulled a chair closer, sat. "You've been out for 18 hours. Claire blinked, tried to process that. "The men at the warehouse?" "In custody. Federal agents have them." His expression hardened. "They're not talking yet, but they will." Claire looked down at herself. Bandages wrapped her torso. IV line in her arm, catheter. She felt like she'd been hit by a truck and then dragged behind it. "The bullet went through," the general said quietly. "Missed everything vital. You're lucky." "Doesn't feel lucky." "You threw yourself in front of a bullet meant for my daughter." His voice cracked slightly. "I'd call that a lot of things. Stupid, maybe. Reckless, definitely. But lucky?" He shook his head. "You earned more than luck." Claire closed her eyes. The pain was manageable. The shame wasn't, because she'd failed. Danny had been taken on her watch, because Claire hadn't been fast enough, smart enough, because she'd spent 6 years pretending to be someone else instead of staying sharp. "Stop," the general said. Claire opened her eyes. "What?" "Whatever you're thinking, stop." He leaned forward. "You saved her twice in one night. Once in that trauma bay, once in that warehouse. So whatever guilt you're carrying, let it go." Claire wanted to believe him, but the weight in her chest said otherwise. A knock at the door interrupted them. One of the federal agents from before stepped in. The taller one. He'd taken off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves. Looked like he'd been up as long as the general. "She's awake," he said. Not a question. "Just," the general replied. The agent walked to the foot of the bed. "Agent Porter, DOD Special Investigations. We met briefly before things went sideways." Claire nodded. "I remember." "Good. Because we need to talk." Porter pulled out a tablet. "The two men you took down at the warehouse, Keller and Briggs. Both former military. Dishonorably discharged. Records show they've been working private security for the last 3 years." "For who?" Claire asked. "That's the problem. The company they're listed under doesn't exist. Shell Corporation. Layers of paperwork that lead nowhere." Porter swiped the screen. "But we pulled their financials. In the last 6 months, they each received 3 payments, $50,000 each, routed through offshore accounts." The general's jaw tightened. "Someone paid them $150,000 to kill my daughter." "To abduct her," Porter corrected. "We found cable ties, chloroform, a burner phone with coordinates to a location upstate. They weren't planning to kill her. Not immediately." "Ransom?" Claire asked. "Maybe. Or leverage." Porter looked at the general. "Your clearance level gives you access to intelligence most 3-stars never see. Operations, assets, black budget programs. If someone wanted that information and couldn't get it directly, they'd go through Danny," the general finished, his voice flat. Porter nodded. "Which means this wasn't random, and it wasn't over." Claire's stomach dropped. "They'll try again. Not if we find who hired them first." Porter turned the tablet toward Claire. "Which is where you come in." On the screen was a photo. Security footage from the hospital. Grainy but clear enough. Dr. Vance, talking to someone in the parking garage. Someone whose face was turned away from the camera. "We found this on the backup server," Porter said. "Timestamp puts it 2 hours before the abduction. Vance met with this person. Talked for 4 minutes. Then the person left, and Vance went back inside." "You think Vance set it up?" Claire said. "We know he did. He confessed an hour ago." Porter swiped again. "But he claims he didn't know what they were planning. Says they told him they just needed patient information, discharge times, security protocols. And he believed them?" The general's voice was ice. "He was desperate, scared, stupid." Porter shrugged. "Take your pick. Point is, he gave them everything they needed to grab Danny. But he swears he doesn't know who hired him. Says all communication was through encrypted messages. Payments in cryptocurrency. He never met anyone face to face except this one time." Claire stared at the photo. The figure was medium height, wearing a dark coat, hood up. Could have been anyone. "Can you enhance it?" she asked. "Already tried. Resolution's too low." Porter zoomed in. The face was nothing but pixels. "But we're running gait analysis, body language, trying to match it against known operatives." "That'll take days," the general said. "We don't have days," Claire said quietly. Both men looked at her. "If they were willing to pay $300,000 for one attempt, they'll pay more for a second," Claire continued. "And now they know Danny's protected, which means next time they'll come harder." Porter's expression confirmed it. "We're moving her to Fort Hamilton within the hour. Secure medical wing, armed guards. No visitors without clearance." "What about me?" Claire asked. "You're staying here until you're stable enough to transfer." "No." The general frowned. "Claire, if they know who I am, I'm a target too." Claire pushed herself up, gritting her teeth against the pain. "Keeping me here makes me a sitting duck." "You can barely move," the general said. "I've worked through worse." "When?" Claire met his eyes. "Mosul, 2019. Took shrapnel in the leg during an extraction. Flew another 90 miles before we landed." The general's face shifted. He'd read the reports. He knew the mission. 7 wounded soldiers pulled from a hot zone under heavy fire. The pilot had been injured but kept flying. He just hadn't known it was her. "You should have been grounded," he said quietly. "Probably." "You could have crashed." "Didn't." Porter cleared his throat. "As touching as this trip down memory lane is, we have a problem." He pulled up another file. 2 hours ago, someone tried to access classified files on Captain Hayes. Used administrative credentials from the Pentagon. Claire's blood went cold. "Did they get in?" No, but they tried 3 times before the system locked them out. Porter's face was grim. Which means someone inside the DoD is looking for you. And they're not being subtle about it. The general stood. Pull the access logs. I want names. Already done. The credentials belong to a Colonel Stanton, works in strategic intelligence. Bring him in. We can't. Porter hesitated. He's been dead for 2 weeks. Car accident outside Arlington. The room went silent. Claire's mind raced. Someone had used a dead man's credentials to search for her, which meant they had access to DoD systems, which meant they were either inside the department or had someone on the inside feeding them information. It's not just about Danny, Claire said slowly. It's about me. The general turned. What? Think about it. They tried to grab Danny to get leverage over you, but they also tried to find out who I am. Why? Because I'm a variable they didn't account for. Claire swung her legs off the bed, ignoring the screaming pain in her side. I saved Danny, twice. I recognized the dog's training. I tracked them to the warehouse, which means I have skills they weren't expecting. Skills that make you dangerous, Porter added. Exactly. Claire stood, swaying slightly. So now they have 2 problems. The general who won't break, and the pilot who won't stay hidden. The general grabbed her arm to steady her. You need to sit down. I need to move. Claire pulled free, took a step. Her legs held, barely. If I stay here, I'm trapped. But if I go to Fort Hamilton with Danny, you put her at risk, the general interrupted. If they're targeting you, being near her makes her a secondary objective. Or it keeps us both in one place. Easier to protect. Porter shook his head. Or easier to hit with one strike. Claire looked between them. So what's your plan? Hide me? Relocate me under witness protection? Change my name again? Her voice hardened. I've been hiding for 6 years. It didn't work. They found me anyway. Because you made yourself visible, the general said, because I did my job. And now you're a target. I've been a target before. The general's expression flickered. Frustration, fear, something else she couldn't read. This isn't a war zone, Hayes, he said quietly. This is domestic, civilian. You can't just shoot your way out. I know that. Do you? Claire held his gaze. I walked away from the military because I was tired of killing, tired of watching people die, tired of making choices that kept me up at night. Her voice softened. But I didn't walk away because I was weak. And I'm not going to start hiding now just because someone's scared of what I can do. The general said nothing. Porter broke the silence. We have another problem. Claire turned. What now? Vance. He's asking to make a deal. The general's jaw clenched. What kind of deal? Full immunity in exchange for information. Porter pulled up a document on the tablet. He says he has proof of who's behind this. Names, locations, financial records. But he won't hand it over unless we guarantee protection. He doesn't get to negotiate, the general said. Legally, he does. And his lawyers already filed the paperwork. Claire felt her hands curl into fists. He helped them kidnap Danny. He gave them access. And now he wants immunity? He wants to live, Porter said flatly. And honestly, if he has what he says he has, it might be worth it. The general looked like he wanted to put his fist through the wall. When does he want to talk? Now. But he has conditions. Of course he does. He'll only speak to Nurse Hayes. Claire blinked. What? Porter nodded. He says you're the only one he trusts not to kill him. That's a bold assumption, Claire muttered. The general shook his head. Absolutely not. You're injured. You need rest. And Vance is a manipulative... I'll do it, Claire said. No. General, if he has information that can stop this, we need it. We'll get it another way. How? By waiting for his lawyer to drag this out for weeks? Claire stepped closer. We don't have weeks. You said it yourself. They're going to try again. And if Vance knows who's pulling the strings, I want to hear it. The general looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Porter. Where is he? County jail, protective custody. Fine, we go together. And if he tries anything, he won't, Claire interrupted. He's too scared. Porter's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face darkening. We need to move. Now. What happened? The general asked. Briggs, the guy from the warehouse. He just coded in the prison infirmary. Claire's stomach dropped. Coded how? Cyanide. Someone slipped it into his food. Porter was already heading for the door. He's dead. And if they got to him, they can get to Vance. The general grabbed Claire's arm. You're not leaving this hospital. You need me. I need you alive. Then come with me. The general hesitated. Then he cursed under his breath and pulled out his phone. Get me a security detail, full escort, and I want a medic standing by. Porter was already moving. I'll have a car ready in 5. Claire grabbed the general's sleeve before he could follow. I need clothes and a weapon. You're not getting a weapon. Then I'm not going. They stared at each other. You're impossible, the general said. I learned from the best. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he gestured to one of the MPs standing outside the door. Get her scrubs and a vest. The MP left. 10 minutes later, Claire was dressed. Kevlar vest over scrubs. Her side throbbed with every breath, but she could move. The general handed her a Glock 19. She checked the magazine. Full. You remember how to use that? He asked. Claire racked the slide. Like riding a bike. They left the hospital through a service exit. 2 SUVs waited, engines running, MPs in tactical gear, Porter in the lead vehicle. Claire climbed into the second SUV with the general. The world tilted as she sat, pain lancing through her torso. She swallowed it down. The general watched her. You should have stayed. Probably. The convoy pulled out. They drove fast. Lights flashing. Traffic parted like water. Claire watched the city blur past, her hand resting on the Glock in her lap. Beside her, the general was on the phone, giving orders, coordinating. His voice was calm, but his knuckles were white. How's Danny? Claire asked when he hung up. Asking about you. Claire's chest tightened. Tell her I'm fine. I'm not going to lie to her. Then tell her I'm alive. That's close enough. The general's mouth twitched. She wants to see you. After this is over. She's stubborn, like her mother. Claire glanced at him. He didn't talk about his wife often. She'd died 4 years ago, cancer. Danny had been 13. She'd be proud of her, Claire said quietly. The general's eyes softened. Yeah, she would. They drove in silence for a while. Then Porter's voice crackled over the radio. We have a tail. Black sedan. 3 cars back. The general grabbed the handset. Can you confirm? Running plates now. Stand by. Claire turned, looked through the rear window. The sedan was there. Tinted windows, keeping pace. Could be nothing, the general said. Could be, Claire agreed. But her hand tightened on the Glock. Porter's voice came back. Plates are stolen. Registered to a vehicle reported missing 2 days ago. The general's face hardened. Lose them. The convoy accelerated. The sedan matched speed. They're not even trying to be subtle, Claire said. They don't need to be. The general leaned forward. How far to the jail? The driver answered. 8 minutes. Make it 5. The SUVs weaved through traffic. The sedan stayed close, and then it pulled alongside. The rear window rolled down. Claire saw the barrel of a rifle. Down, she shouted. The general yanked her to the floor as gunfire erupted. Bullets punched through the rear windshield. Glass exploded. The driver cursed, swerving hard. Claire's side screamed in protest as she was thrown against the seat. She gritted her teeth, forced herself up, raised the Glock. The sedan was still there. She fired through the shattered window. Once, twice. The sedan's windshield spiderwebbed. It dropped back. Everyone okay? The general barked. Yeah, the driver said, his voice tight. Claire checked herself. No new holes, just the old one reminding her it existed. Porter's voice on the radio. We're calling for backup. ETA 3 minutes. We don't have 3 minutes, the general said. Ahead, Claire saw the jail. Concrete walls, razor wire, guards and towers. The sedan was accelerating again. They're going to ram us, Claire said. The driver saw it too. Hold on. He yanked the wheel, cutting across 2 lanes. Horns blared. The sedan overshot, skidded, recovered. But they'd gained distance. The convoy screeched into the jail entrance. Guards swarmed out, weapons raised. The sedan didn't follow. It disappeared into traffic. Claire exhaled. Her hands were shaking. The general helped her out of the SUV. You hit? No. You? I'm fine. Porter jogged over. That was a message. What kind of message? The general asked. The kind that says they know where we're going, and they don't care who sees them. Porter looked toward the jail. We need to get Vance out of here. Now! They moved inside. Guards led them through a maze of corridors, concrete, steel, the smell of sweat and disinfectant. Vance was in a private cell. No windows. Camera in the corner. He looked worse than Claire remembered, pale, sweating, eyes darting like a cornered animal. You came, he said when he saw her. I'm here. Talk. Vance glanced at the general, then Porter. Alone. Not happening, the general said. Then I don't talk. Porter stepped forward. A man just tried to kill us on the way here. Another man died in custody 2 hours ago. You think you're safe because you're in a cell? He leaned closer. You're not. So whatever game you're playing, end it. Now. Vance's face crumpled. I don't know their names. I swear. I just know what they want. Which is? Claire asked. Information. On black sites. Interrogation programs. Rendition flights. Vance looked at the general. They knew you ran operations in Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, places that don't officially exist. The general's expression went cold. How did they know that? Because someone told them, someone with access. Vance wiped his mouth. They approached me 6 months ago, said they needed a way into Riverside General, access to patient records, specifically military personnel. Why? To build profiles, find vulnerabilities, family members, medical histories, anything that could be used as leverage. Claire felt sick. How many people did you give them? I don't know, dozens, maybe more. The general's fist slammed into the wall. You sold out soldiers. I sold out names on a screen, Vance shouted. I didn't know what they were going to do with them. You knew enough, Claire said quietly. Vance looked at her, his eyes desperate. I can give you the files. Everything I sent them, dates, records, it's all on a drive I kept as insurance. Porter straightened. Where is it? My house. Hidden in the garage, behind the water heater. Porter pulled out his phone, started typing. How do we know you're not lying? The general asked. Because I'm dead, either way. Vance's voice broke. If I don't help you, they'll kill me to keep me quiet. If I do help you, they'll kill me for betraying them. My only chance is witness protection, new identity, new life. You don't deserve a new life, the general said. I know. Vance's face twisted. But I'm giving you a chance to stop them. That has to count for something. Claire studied him. Coward, traitor, desperate man who'd made the worst possible choices. But he was also their only lead. Who met you in the parking garage? She asked. Vance hesitated. I don't know. You're lying. I'm not. I never saw a face. Just heard a voice, distorted, like they were using a modulator. Man or woman? I couldn't tell. Porter cursed under his breath. Claire stepped closer to the cell. What did they say? That I'd done good work, that there was one more job, high-value target. If I helped, I'd be paid enough to disappear. And you believed them? I wanted to. Claire felt a flash of anger, then pity, then nothing. Get the drive, she said to Porter. He nodded. Team's already en route to his house. The general grabbed Vance by the collar through the bars. If you're playing us, I'm not. I swear. The general released him, stepped back. They left the cell. In the corridor, Porter's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face going pale. What? The general demanded. Vance's house. It's on fire. Claire's stomach dropped. The drive? Gone. The whole garage is engulfed. The general turned back toward the cell, but Claire caught his arm. He didn't do this, she said. How do you know? Because he's terrified. And because whoever's behind this knew we'd come for that drive. Claire's mind raced. They're covering their tracks, which means they're getting ready to move. Porter was already on his phone again, coordinating. The general's radio crackled. One of the MPs from Fort Hamilton. Sir, we have a situation. The general grabbed the handset. Report. Perimeter breach. Southgate. Vehicle tried to ram through. We stopped it, but gunfire erupted over the radio. Then screaming, then static. The general's face went white. Danny! He ran. Claire followed, pain forgotten, adrenaline searing through her veins. They hit the parking lot at a sprint, climbed into the SUV. The driver didn't wait for orders, just floored it. Porter's voice on the radio coordinating with Fort Hamilton security. The general shouting into his phone. Claire checked her weapon. Reloaded. Because whoever was coming for Danny wasn't going to stop. And neither was she. They covered the distance in 23 minutes, ran every red light. The fort's gates were open, smoke rising from somewhere inside. MPs waved them through. The medical wing was on lockdown. Guards everywhere. Spent shell casings littering the ground. The general jumped out before the SUV stopped moving. Claire was right behind him. They found the commander of the fort in the main corridor, blood on his uniform, grim face. Status, the general demanded. 3 hostiles, heavily armed. They breached the south gate with an IED, engaged our forces, pushed toward the medical wing. Where are they now? Dead. We took them down before they reached your daughter's room. The general's shoulders sagged with relief. She's safe? Yes, sir, shaken but unharmed. Claire leaned against the wall, her legs threatening to give out. It was over, except it wasn't. Because as the general headed toward Danny's room, Porter grabbed Claire's arm. We have a problem, he said quietly. Another one? The hostiles. We ID'd them. All 3 are former DoD contractors, and their last known employer, he hesitated, was a private security firm under contract with the Pentagon. Claire's blood turned to ice. You're saying? I'm saying this came from inside. Porter's voice was barely audible. And whoever ordered it has access to everything. Personnel files, locations, schedules. Who? We don't know yet, but it's someone high enough to authorize a kill team on a military base. Claire's mind reeled. How high? Porter met her eyes, and in that moment, Claire understood. This wasn't just about Danny. It wasn't just about the general. It was about something bigger, deeper. And it was just beginning. The lights went out. Emergency backup kicked in, bathing the corridor in red, and somewhere in the darkness, an alarm began to wail. The emergency lights painted everything in shades of blood. Claire's hand went to her weapon as boots pounded down the corridor, MPs responding to the alarm, voices shouting coordinates and clearances over radios that crackled with static. Porter was already moving toward the server room. Stay with the general. Claire didn't argue. She pushed through the chaos toward Danny's room, where the general had disappeared seconds before the power cut. 2 guards stood outside the door, rifles raised, scanning the hallway with night vision goggles. One of them recognized Claire and stepped aside. Inside, the general had Danny pressed against the far wall, his body between her and the door. The girl's face was pale in the emergency lighting, but her eyes were sharp, alert. What's happening? Danny asked. Power's out, Claire said. Probably precautionary. They're checking the systems now. That's not what you think, Danny said quietly. Claire met her eyes. The girl was 17, but she'd grown up in this world. She knew when adults were lying. No, Claire admitted. It's not. The general's radio erupted with overlapping voices. He listened, his jaw tightening with each transmission. Talk to me, he said into the handset. Power grid's been compromised, came the response. Someone cut the main line outside the perimeter. Backup generators are online, but we're running on 30% capacity. How long to restore primary power? Engineering says 40 minutes minimum. The general swore under his breath. He looked at Claire. They're isolating us. Or flushing us out, Claire said. Before he could respond, Porter burst back into the room, tablet in hand. His face was grim. We have confirmation. The breach wasn't random. He pulled up a schematic on the screen. Someone mapped our entire security network, guard rotations, camera blind spots, generator locations. This was planned. By who? The general demanded. We're still tracing the access logs, but Porter hesitated. The last login before the grid went down came from inside Fort Hamilton, someone with command-level clearance. The room went cold. That's not possible, the general said. Everyone on this base has been vetted. So was Vance, Claire said quietly. The general's face darkened. He grabbed the radio. I want a full lockdown, no one in or out, and I want the base commander in my office. Now. Sir, the base commander is who authorized the clearance. The general froze. Claire's mind raced through the implications. If the base commander was compromised, then every security protocol was suspect. Every guard. Every exit. We need to move Danny, she said. Where? The general asked. If we can't trust the base, then we get her off it. Claire turned to Porter. You have a helicopter? On the pad. But if we fly out, we're exposed. No cover. And if they have surface-to-air capability, they don't. The words came from Danny. Everyone looked at her. The team that hit us earlier, she continued. I saw their loadout when they were loading me into the van. Small arms. Explosives. Nothing sophisticated. They're equipped for close quarters, not aerial assault. Porter frowned. How do you know what you're looking at? Because my father's been training me since I was 12, Danny said flatly. I know what a stinger looks like. They didn't have one. The general's expression shifted, pride mixed with something that looked like guilt. She's right, he said quietly. If they had anti-air, they would have used it when we flew in yesterday. Claire nodded. Then we go by air, fast and low. Get her somewhere they can't predict. Like where? Porter asked. Claire thought fast. Somewhere off the grid. Somewhere with minimal digital footprint. Somewhere she knew from experience could handle a crisis. Pinehurst Medical Center, she said. 2 hours north. Small facility. Trauma certified. No DoD contracts. No federal oversight. How do you know it? The general asked. Because I worked there 3 years ago, before I came to Riverside. Claire met his eyes. And the director owes me a favor. Porter pulled up the location on his tablet. It's remote, single access road. That's a vulnerability. It's also defensible, Claire countered, and they won't see it coming. The general studied her. You trust them? More than I trust anyone on this base right now. That settled it. The general grabbed his radio. Prep the Black Hawk. Flight crew only. No ground support. We leave in 10 minutes. Porter's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went ashen. What now? Claire asked. Vance. He's asking to speak to you again. Says it's urgent. Tell him to wait. He says if you don't come now, people are going to die. Claire's stomach dropped. What does that mean? Porter showed her the message. It had come through the jail's secure system, time-stamped 3 minutes ago. They're not after the girl, they're after you, and they're already inside. Claire's blood ran cold. Inside where? Porter's radio crackled, then screaming, gunfire, more screaming, then silence. The general's face went white. That came from the medical wing. They ran. The corridor was chaos. MPs scrambling, medics shouting, patients being evacuated from rooms. Smoke curled from somewhere deeper in the building. Claire pushed through, following the sound of shouting. She found the source in the main ward. 3 bodies on the floor. 2 MPs, 1 doctor, all shot at close range. And standing over them, surrounded by armed guards, was a man in a white coat. Claire didn't recognize him, but the way he held himself, calm, controlled, hands raised but not shaking, told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't a doctor. Don't move, one of the MPs barked. The man smiled. I'm not armed. Then who shot them? The general demanded, arriving behind Claire. The man's eyes flicked to the general, then to Claire, and his smile widened. She did. Every weapon in the room turned toward Claire. What? Claire's voice came out strangled. Security footage, the man said calmly. Timestamp shows you entering this wing 12 minutes ago, firing 3 shots, then leaving. I was with you, Claire said to the general, the entire time. That's what I'll tell them, the general said, his voice hard. But someone planted evidence, and if he's saying, but... Check the cameras, the man interrupted. See for yourself. Porter was already pulling up the feed on his tablet. His face went pale. Show me, the general ordered. Porter turned the screen. And there, in grainy black and white, was footage of someone in scrubs walking into the medical wing. Someone with Claire's build. Claire's walk. Raising a weapon. Firing. 3 shots. 3 bodies. Then walking out. Claire's vision tunneled. That's not me. Timestamp says otherwise, the man said. And ballistics will match the weapon you're carrying. Claire looked down at the Glock in her hand, the same weapon the general had given her hours ago. Her mind raced. Someone had set her up, used her weapon or one identical to it, dressed like her, moved like her. This is a setup, she said. Of course it is, the man replied, but that won't stop them from arresting you. The MPs were moving closer now, unsure but following protocol. The general stepped between them and Claire. Stand down. Sir, if the footage... I said stand down. The general's voice cut like a blade. That video is fake, and I want to know who doctored it. I did, the man said simply. Everyone froze. I also cut the power, burned Vance's house, hired the team that attacked this base. He looked at Claire. And I've been looking for you for 6 years, Captain Hayes. Claire's heart stopped. The general's weapon was out, aimed at the man's chest. Who are you? Someone who knows what she did. The man's eyes never left Claire. Mosul, 2019. The extraction that earned her a silver star. 7 soldiers pulled from a hot zone. He paused. But she left 8 behind. Claire felt the floor tilt. That's classified, the general said. So is the fact that those 8 soldiers were carrying intelligence that could have ended the war 2 years early. Intelligence that disappeared when Captain Hayes decided 7 lives were worth more than 8. The man's voice was ice. Intelligence that I spent 3 years gathering. Claire's throat closed. She remembered that mission. Remembered the weight of the decision. 7 wounded soldiers who would die without immediate evac. 8 soldiers deeper in the compound, coordinates uncertain, condition unknown. She'd made the call, saved the 7, left the 8, and she'd lived with that choice every day since. They were already dead, she whispered. No, the man said. They were captured, interrogated, tortured, and when they finally broke, they gave up everything. Names, locations, operations. His voice cracked slightly. My brother was one of them. The room went silent. I'm sorry, Claire said. You're sorry. The man laughed bitterly. You left them to die and you're sorry. I saved 7 lives. You sacrificed 8. I made a choice. And now I'm making one. The man pulled something from his pocket. A detonator. Every weapon in the room shifted to him. Easy, Porter said. There are charges throughout this building, the man said calmly, enough to bring it down. And if I press this button, everyone inside dies. The general's aim didn't waver. You'll die too. I know. The man looked at Claire. But so will she, and that's all that matters. Claire's mind raced. The man was military, trained, disciplined, but also broken, grief-stricken, which made him unpredictable. Your brother wouldn't want this, she said quietly. You didn't know my brother. No, but I know soldiers. And I know he wouldn't want you to kill innocent people because of a call I made 6 years ago. You don't get to tell me what he'd want. Then tell me. Claire took a step forward, ignoring the MPs shouting at her to stay back. Tell me his name. The man's finger hovered over the button. Why? Because if I'm going to die for leaving him behind, I want to know who he was. The man's face twisted. Corporal James Holloway. Claire felt the name hit her like a punch. She remembered it. Remembered seeing it on the casualty report weeks after the mission. Remembered the guilt that had threatened to drown her. He was 24, and the man continued. Engaged, planning to go to college when he got back. He wanted to be a teacher. His voice broke. And you left him in that building. I did, Claire said, and I've carried that every day since. But killing everyone in this building won't bring him back. It'll make you pay. I already am. The man's hand shook. You're still alive, still walking around, still playing hero. I'm not a hero, Claire said quietly. I'm just someone who made an impossible choice and has to live with it. That's not enough. I know. They stared at each other, and then the man's finger moved toward the button. Claire didn't think. She just moved. She closed the distance in 3 steps, grabbed his wrist, twisted. The detonator flew from his hand. Claire slammed him against the wall, her forearm across his throat. I'm sorry about your brother, she said, her voice raw. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. But I won't let you kill these people. The man struggled. You don't get to... I do. Claire pressed harder. Because unlike you, I'm still trying to save lives, not end them. The MPs swarmed in, pulling Claire back, forcing the man to the ground. Porter grabbed the detonator, examined it. His face went pale. It's real, he said, and it's armed. The general grabbed the man by his collar. Where are the charges? The man just smiled, blood on his teeth. Everywhere. Porter was already on his phone calling in the bomb squad. Claire stepped back, her hands shaking. She looked at the general. We need to evacuate, now. The general nodded. He barked orders into his radio, and within seconds alarms were blaring throughout the base. But as they moved toward the exit, Porter grabbed Claire's arm. The footage. It's still out there. Command is going to want answers. Then they'll get them, the general said, after we're clear. They ran through corridors filling with smoke and panic, soldiers guiding patients toward the exits, medics carrying stretchers. Claire found Danny with 2 MPs already heading toward the helipad. The girl's eyes found Claire's. You okay? Claire almost laughed. Ask me later. They reached the pad as the Blackhawk's rotors spun up. The general climbed in first, then pulled Danny up. Claire followed, her side screaming in protest. Porter jumped in last, and the helicopter lifted off. Below, Fort Hamilton looked like an anthill someone had kicked. Soldiers pouring out of buildings, vehicles racing toward perimeter exits. And then, in the center of the medical wing, a flash. Not an explosion, just a small burst of light. Porter's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, his face going slack. What? The general asked. The charges. They were duds. Fake detonators, no actual explosives. Claire's mind reeled. He was bluffing? Not bluffing, distracting. Porter's voice was tight. While we were dealing with him, someone accessed the server room, downloaded our entire security database. The general swore. How much did they get? Everything. Personnel files, operational records, classified intel dating back 5 years. Claire felt sick. They used him as bait. And we took it, Porter said bitterly. The general's radio crackled. A new voice, calm, authoritative. General Mercer, this is Colonel Westfield, DOD Internal Affairs. We need you to land immediately and surrender custody of Captain Hayes. The general's face hardened. On what grounds? Suspicion of murder, treason, and desertion. Claire's heart stopped. That's insane, the general said. The evidence says otherwise. You have 30 seconds to comply or we will force you down. The general looked at the pilot. How far to Pinehurst? 20 minutes. Can we make it before they scramble interceptors? The pilot's face was grim. Maybe. But if they're serious about forcing us down, they are, Porter said, looking at his tablet. 2 F-16S just launched from Andrews, ETA 12 minutes. The general turned to Claire. His eyes were hard, but there was something else there. Trust. Your call, Hayes. Claire looked at Danny. The girl was watching her with an expression that reminded Claire why she'd walked away from the military in the first place. She'd been tired of impossible choices. But here she was, facing another one. If they ran, they'd be fugitives, hunted by the same government they'd served. If they surrendered, Claire would be arrested, tried, probably convicted on fabricated evidence. Either way, the people pulling the strings would win, unless Claire changed the game. Land at Pinehurst, she said. The general's eyebrow raised. You sure? No, but I'm tired of running. Claire looked at Porter. And I'm betting whoever set this up wants me in custody, which means they're scared of what I know. Or what you can prove, Porter said slowly. Exactly. Claire's mind was racing now. The footage was fake. The charges were fake. Even the detonator was a setup, which means everything that happened tonight was theater. To what end? The general asked. To discredit me, isolate me, make sure no one believes a word I say. Claire looked out the window at the darkness below. Which means I know something they can't afford to let surface. Like what? Claire thought back through the last 48 hours. The dog, the attack, Vance's confession, the man who'd claimed his brother died because of her. And then it clicked. The intelligence, she said, from Mosul. The intel that supposedly disappeared when I left those soldiers behind. What about it? The general asked. It didn't disappear. It was extracted by someone with access to interrogation records. Claire's voice was cold now. Someone who knew exactly what those soldiers would reveal under torture. Someone who wanted that information kept quiet. Porter's eyes widened. You're saying someone in DOD let those soldiers be captured deliberately? I'm saying someone knew they'd break, and instead of mounting a rescue, they waited, listened, and then buried everything those soldiers said. The general's face went white. That's not just treason. That's murder, Claire finished. 8 soldiers died to protect a secret, and whoever's behind this has been covering it up for 6 years. Porter was already typing on his tablet. If you're right, there'll be a record, communication logs, authorization codes, which they'll have scrubbed, Claire said. But there's one place they can't erase. Where? Claire met the general's eyes. The field reports I filed after the mission. The ones I submitted through encrypted channels directly to SOCOM. The general's expression shifted. Those reports are classified above my pay grade. But not above yours, Claire said to Porter. Porter hesitated. Accessing those files without authorization is the least of our problems right now, the general interrupted. Do it. Porter's fingers flew across the screen. The helicopter banked hard, heading north. Below, the lights of the interstate spread like veins, and somewhere behind them, 2 fighter jets were closing fast. Porter's face went slack as he read. Jesus. What? The general demanded. Claire's report. It's still there, and it names names. Porter looked up. Including the officer who ordered her to abort the rescue mission for the 8 soldiers. Who? Porter turned the tablet, and Claire saw the name. Colonel David Westfield, the same man who'd just ordered them to land. The general's face went from white to red. He grabbed the radio. Westfield, this is Mercer. I know what you did. Silence. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. Mosul, 2019, 8 soldiers. You ordered Hayes to leave them behind because you knew what they'd been carrying and you wanted it buried. Another pause, longer this time. You're making a mistake, General. The only mistake was trusting you. The general's voice was ice. We're going public. With everything. No, you're not. Westfield's tone shifted, harder now. Because if you do, I'll make sure Captain Hayes is tried for treason, and your daughter becomes collateral damage in a national security investigation that will destroy both your careers. The general's hand tightened on the radio. You won't do that, he said, but his voice wavered. Won't I? Westfield laughed. I've spent 6 years building this, protecting operations you can't even imagine. And you think I'll let a washed-up pilot and a sentimental general bring it down? Claire grabbed the radio from the general's hand. This is Hayes. You want me? Fine. I'll land. I'll surrender. But you leave the general and his daughter out of this. Claire, no. The general started. She held up a hand. Deal, Westfield said. Land at the coordinates I'm sending, alone. The radio went dead. The general stared at her. You can't do this. It's the only play we have. He'll kill you. Probably. Claire looked at Danny. But he won't kill her. And that's what matters. Porter's tablet beeped. Coordinates appeared on the screen. An airfield, 40 miles east, private, off the books. That's a trap, Porter said. I know, Claire replied. The general's jaw worked. There has to be another way. There isn't, not one that keeps them safe. Claire pulled the Glock from her holster, checked the magazine. But I'm not going in unarmed. Against a team of operators, you won't last 5 minutes. Claire smiled grimly. Then I better make them count. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. F-16S are 2 minutes out. If we're going to do this, we need to decide now. The general looked at Claire, then at his daughter, then back at Claire. I can't let you do this alone, he said quietly. You don't have a choice. Claire reached over, squeezed his shoulder. Take care of Danny, and when this is over, make sure the truth gets out. Claire, promise me. The general's eyes were wet. I promise. Claire nodded. She looked at Danny. Stay alive, the girl said. I'll try. Claire turned to the pilot. Take me to those coordinates, then get them to Pinehurst. You got it. The helicopter banked hard, and as they descended toward the dark airfield below, Claire realized she'd come full circle. 6 years ago, she'd walked away from the military because she couldn't live with the choices it forced her to make. Now she was walking back into it, not as a soldier, but as someone who finally understood what she'd been running from. Not the missions, not the violence, but the truth, that some choices didn't have right answers, only necessary ones. The helicopter touched down. Claire jumped out, weapon raised. Floodlights snapped on, blinding her. And when her vision cleared, she saw them, a dozen armed men in tactical gear surrounding her. And standing in the center, calm and composed, was Colonel Westfield. "Captain Hayes," he said. "Welcome home." Claire's finger rested against the trigger guard, not the trigger itself. Basic discipline. The kind that kept you alive when outnumbered 12-1. Westfield stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. He was older than she had expected. Mid-50s, graying at the temples. The kind of face that looked dignified in uniform and unremarkable in civilian clothes. The kind of man who could disappear into a crowd or command a room, depending on what the situation required. "Put the weapon down, Captain," he said. "This doesn't have to end badly." Claire didn't move. "It already has. For you." Westfield smiled. "You think you're in control here? I think you wouldn't have brought me here if you were." That made his smile falter, just slightly. Behind her, the Blackhawk's rotors were spinning up again. The general had wanted to stay, but Claire had made it clear. They left, or she didn't move. She heard the helicopter lift off, felt the downdraft against her back. Good. They were safe. That was all that mattered. Westfield's eyes tracked the aircraft as it banked north. Touching. "You sacrificed yourself for them. That's what you do for people you care about." "Is it?" Westfield's voice hardened. "Because 6 years ago, you didn't care about 8 soldiers who needed you." "I cared," Claire said quietly. "I just couldn't save everyone." "You didn't even try." "I tried to save the ones I could reach." Claire's grip on the weapon didn't waver. "You're the one who made sure I couldn't reach the others." Westfield's face went cold. "Careful, Captain." "Why?" "You're going to kill me anyway." Claire took a step forward. The tactical team shifted, weapons tracking her movement. "So let's stop pretending this is about justice. It's about covering your ass. It's about national security. It's about the intel those 8 soldiers were carrying, the intel you wanted buried because it implicated you in something worse than leaving them behind." Westfield's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then enlighten me." For a long moment, Westfield said nothing. Then he gestured to his team. "Lower your weapons." They hesitated. "I said lower them." The barrels dropped, not holstered, just pointed at the ground. Westfield walked closer, stopping 10 feet from Claire. Those soldiers weren't just carrying intelligence. They were carrying proof of rendition programs I ran, black sites, enhanced interrogations, things that needed to stay buried for the safety of operations still in play. "You mean for the safety of your career?" "My career is irrelevant." Westfield's voice dropped. "What those men knew could have exposed networks we spent decades building, could have gotten hundreds of operatives killed, could have destabilized entire regions. So you let them die." "I made a choice, the same kind you made." Westfield's eyes bore into hers. "I chose the many over the few, just like you did when you left them behind." Claire felt the words hit like a physical blow. Because he wasn't wrong. She had made that choice. 7 lives over 8. "The difference," she said slowly, "is that I didn't set them up to be captured in the first place." Westfield's face went blank. "What?" "You heard me." Claire's voice was steady now. "You knew that compound was compromised. You knew enemy forces were closing in. And you sent those soldiers anyway because you needed someone expendable to take the fall if your programs got exposed." "That's absurd." "Is it? Because I read the mission brief, and the timeline doesn't add up." Claire took another step forward. "They were inserted 48 hours before my team arrived, which means you had time to extract them when the intel came through that the compound was hot. But you didn't. You waited. Until it was too late." Westfield's composure cracked. Just for a second. But Claire saw it. "You can't prove that," he said. Actually, I can. Claire pulled something from her pocket, a small flash drive. Because before Porter accessed my field reports, he made a copy and uploaded it to 3 separate servers with dead man's switches. Westfield went pale. What did you do? Insurance. If I don't check in within the hour, everything goes public. Mission logs, communication intercepts, authorization codes with your signature. Claire's voice went hard. 8 soldiers died because you used them as bait, and when I wouldn't play along with the cover-up, you spent 6 years trying to destroy me. You don't understand the stakes. I understand you're a coward who hides behind national security while good people die for your mistakes. Westfield's hand moved toward his sidearm. Claire's weapon came up. Don't. He froze. You're not going to shoot me, he said. You're not a killer. You're right. I'm not. Claire's finger moved to the trigger. But I've killed before, when I had to. And if you give me a reason, I will again. The tactical team raised their weapons. Claire didn't flinch. You really want to do this? Murder a decorated officer on an open airfield? With witnesses? What witnesses? Westfield gestured to the empty tarmac, and then headlights flared from the perimeter, multiple vehicles converging fast. Westfield spun. What is this? Justice, Claire said. The vehicles screeched to a halt, black SUVs with federal plates. Agents poured out, weapons drawn. Leading them was a woman in her 40s, FBI jacket, badge on her belt. Colonel Westfield, she called. FBI, you're under arrest. Westfield's face twisted. You have no authority. We have a warrant, signed by a federal judge an hour ago. The agent held up a document. Conspiracy, murder, obstruction of justice, and about 15 other charges that are going to put you away for the rest of your life. Westfield looked at Claire. You set me up. No, you set yourself up 6 years ago. Claire lowered her weapon. I just made sure someone was listening when you confessed. Westfield's eyes widened. You're wired. Claire pulled her shirt aside, revealing the small mic taped to her ribs. Every word, recorded and transmitted. The FBI agent stepped forward. Colonel Westfield, put your hands behind your head. For a moment, Claire thought he might resist, might go for his weapon, might try to fight his way out. But then his shoulders slumped, and he raised his hands. 2 agents moved in, cuffing him. As they led him past Claire, he stopped. This won't change anything. People like me always find a way back. Claire met his eyes. Maybe, but you won't. They pushed him into one of the SUVs. The FBI agent approached Claire. Captain Hayes? Just Claire now. Agent Reeves. We've been building a case against Westfield for 8 months. Your testimony is going to be crucial. You'll have it. Reeves glanced at the tactical team, who were being disarmed and detained. These men were following orders. Some of them didn't know what they were part of. Some did, Claire said. We'll sort them out. Reeves paused. For what it's worth, I read your service record. What you did in Mosul, saving those 7 soldiers, that took guts. It also cost 8 lives. Maybe. Or maybe you made the only choice you could with the information you had. Reeves handed Claire a card. Call me when you're ready to give a formal statement. We'll make sure you're protected. Claire took the card. Thank you. Reeves nodded and walked back to her team. Claire stood alone on the tarmac, the night air cold against her skin. Her side throbbed. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. She felt like she'd been awake for a week. But it was over. Westfield was in custody. The truth was coming out. Danny was safe. Claire's phone buzzed, a text from the general. We're at Pinehurst. Danny's asking for you. Where are you? Claire typed back. On my way. She looked around for a ride. One of the FBI agents offered to drive her, but Claire declined. She needed time to think, to process. Instead, she walked to the edge of the airfield where a small access road led to the highway. She'd hitchhike if she had to, wouldn't be the first time. But before she reached the road, headlights appeared. A car pulled up. The window rolled down. Porter. Need a lift? He asked. Claire almost laughed. How did you... Tracked your phone. Figured you'd need an exit strategy. He gestured to the passenger seat. Get in. Claire climbed in. The car was warm. The radio played softly. It felt surreal after everything. Porter pulled onto the highway. You did good back there. I didn't do anything. You're the one who set up the recording. You're the one who got him to confess. Porter glanced at her. That took nerve. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. They drove in silence for a while. Claire watched the landscape blur past. Small towns, dark fields, the occasional gas station glowing like a beacon. What happens now? She asked. FBI builds their case. DOD launches an internal investigation. Westfield goes to trial. Porter's voice was flat. It's going to be messy. A lot of people are going to want this buried. Will they succeed? Not if I have anything to say about it. Porter's hands tightened on the wheel. I've spent 15 years watching people like Westfield operate above the law, using national security as a shield for their crimes. I'm done with it. You could lose your job. Probably, he shrugged. But at least I'll be able to sleep at night. Claire understood that. It was why she'd left the military in the first place. They reached Pinehurst Medical Center just after midnight. The facility was small, 2 stories, maybe 50 beds. Security met them at the entrance, checked their IDs, then escorted them to a private wing. Danny was in the second room, sitting up in bed, bandages fresh, color back in her face. The general sat beside her, looking exhausted but relieved. When Claire walked in, Danny's face lit up. You're alive. Barely, Claire said. The general stood. What happened? Claire told them. All of it. Westfield's confession. The FBI. The arrest. When she finished, the general just stared at her. You confronted him alone, outnumbered, injured. I had backup. You had a wire and a prayer. It worked, didn't it? The general shook his head, but there was something like admiration in his eyes. You're either the bravest person I know or the most reckless. Can I be both? Danny laughed. It was the first time Claire had heard her laugh, and it sounded younger than 17. Lighter. The general's phone rang. He glanced at it. I need to take this. He stepped into the hallway. Claire sat in the chair he'd vacated, looked at Danny. How are you feeling? She asked. Sore. Scared. Grateful. Danny's voice softened. You saved my life. Again. You would have done the same. I don't know if I could have. You're stronger than you think. Danny looked down at her hands. My dad told me what you did. In Mosul. The choice you made. Claire's chest tightened. Yeah. Do you regret it? Claire thought about that. About the 7 soldiers who'd lived because of her. About the 8 who'd died. About the years she'd spent running from the decision. I regret that I had to choose, she said finally, but I don't regret the choice I made. Danny nodded slowly. I think that's brave. It doesn't feel brave. Maybe that's what makes it brave. Claire smiled. You sound like your dad. He's a good man, even if he drives me crazy sometimes. The door opened. The general came back in, his face serious. That was Agent Reeves, he said. They found more evidence in Westfield's files, names, dates, other operations he compromised. He looked at Claire. They're going to need you to testify in front of a congressional committee. Claire's stomach dropped. Public testimony? Closed session, but yes, your name will be on record, which meant no more hiding, no more anonymity. Claire had spent 6 years being invisible, and now she'd be exposed to everyone. When? She asked. 2 weeks. They're expediting the process. Claire nodded. Okay. You don't have to do this, the general said. You could walk away, disappear again. No, I couldn't. Claire met his eyes. Not anymore. Because something had changed in the last 48 hours. Claire had stopped running, and she'd realized that the person she'd been trying to escape wasn't the soldier. It was the guilt. But the guilt wasn't something you could outrun. It was something you had to carry. And the only way to carry it was to accept it, own it. Use it to make better choices going forward. The general nodded. Then we'll make sure you're protected. New identity if you want it. Relocation, whatever you need. I don't want a new identity, Claire said. I want my old one back. The general looked surprised. You want to rejoin the military? No, I want to stop pretending I was never a soldier. Claire stood. I spent 6 years hiding because I thought I didn't deserve to be seen, But I was wrong. I made a hard call. I saved lives. And I'm not going to apologize for that anymore. Danny was watching her with something like awe. The general's face softened. Welcome back, Captain. Just Claire, she corrected. I'm not a captain anymore. You'll always be a captain to me. Claire felt her throat tighten. She looked away, blinking hard. The general's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and sighed. I need to make some calls. You two okay here? We're good, Danny said. He left. Claire sat back down. Her side was killing her. She needed rest, probably more surgery, definitely therapy. But for the first time in 6 years, she felt like she could breathe. What will you do? Danny asked. After the testimony? Claire thought about it. I don't know. Maybe go back to nursing. Maybe something else. You're good at saving people. I'm better at it when I'm not being shot at. Danny smiled. Then her expression turned serious. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think my dad would have made the same choice in Mosul? Claire considered that. Honestly, I don't know. Every situation is different. Every commander makes their own call. But if it had been me, if I'd been one of those soldiers, Danny's voice was small. Would you have left me behind? Claire's heart broke a little. I would have torn that building apart to get to you. Even if it meant other people died? Yes. Danny's eyes filled with tears. That's not fair to them. No, it's not. Claire reached over, took the girl's hand. But fairness isn't something you get in war. You just try to save as many as you can and live with the ones you couldn't. Danny nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm glad you're okay. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Danny yawned. Get some sleep, Claire said, standing. I'll be around. Promise? Promise. Claire left the room, found an empty chair in the hallway and sank into it. Her entire body hurt, but it was a good hurt, the kind that meant you'd fought hard and survived. Porter appeared with 2 cups of coffee, handed her one. Thought you could use this, he said. You read minds now? Just faces. He sat beside her. You did good, Hayes. Stop saying that. Why? Because I don't feel like I did good. I feel like I barely survived. Porter took a sip of his coffee. That's the difference between you and Westfield. You feel it. The weight. The cost. He never did. Claire looked at him. How long have you known? About Westfield? 6 months, but I couldn't prove it. Not until you gave me the opening. So you used me. I gave you a chance to clear your name. Porter's voice was quiet. There's a difference. Claire wasn't sure there was, but she was too tired to argue. They drank their coffee in silence. An hour later, the general came back. Ranger's out of surgery. Vet says he'll make a full recovery. Claire's chest loosened. Can I see him? He's sedated, but tomorrow. Yeah. Good. The general sat across from her. I pulled some strings. Got you reinstated with full honors, backdated to your discharge date. You'll have access to veteran benefits, medical, education, whatever you need. Claire blinked. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. You earned it. I walked away. And you came back when it mattered. The general leaned forward. That takes more courage than staying ever did. Claire didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. The general stood. Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning. He left. Porter finished his coffee. You should sleep. I will. Claire looked at him. Thank you for everything. Just doing my job. No, you went above and beyond. You risked your career. Porter shrugged. Some things are worth the risk. He left too. Claire sat alone in the quiet hallway. The hospital hummed around her, machines beeping, footsteps in distant corridors, the low murmur of voices. It was the same sound she'd heard every night for 6 years. The background noise of healing, and for the first time, Claire felt like she was part of it, not just a witness, not just someone passing through, but someone who belonged. She closed her eyes, let herself rest. The next morning, Claire woke to sunlight streaming through the windows. Her neck was stiff from sleeping in the chair, but the pain in her side had dulled to a manageable ache. A nurse approached. Ms. Hayes? The doctor wants to see you. Claire followed her to an exam room. The doctor was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and tired hands. "How's the wound?" he asked. "Hurts less than yesterday." He examined the bandages, changed the dressing. "You're healing well, but you need to take it easy. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity." Define strenuous. Anything that makes you want to pass out. Claire managed a smile. "I'll try." The doctor wrote her a prescription. "Pain management, and I want to see you back here in a week for a follow-up." "I'll be here." After the exam, Claire found the general in the cafeteria, nursing a cup of terrible coffee. "How's Danny?" she asked, sitting across from him. "Better. They're releasing her this afternoon." He looked at Claire. "She wants to go back to school, get back to normal." "That's good." "Is it?" The general's voice was heavy. "After everything she's been through?" "Normal is what you make it," Claire said. "And maybe for her, normal means not letting what happened define her." The general nodded slowly. "She talks about you, you know. Says you're the strongest person she's ever met." Claire felt her chest tighten. "I'm not that strong." "You stood alone against a dozen armed men. You confronted a colonel who tried to destroy you. You testified knowing it would cost you everything." The general's eyes were serious. "If that's not strength, I don't know what is." Claire looked down at her hands. "I was just doing what needed to be done." That's what strength is. Doing what needs to be done even when you're terrified. Claire didn't answer, because he was right. She had been terrified every step of the way, but she'd done it anyway. The general's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face hardening. "When? And they're sure." He paused. "Understood." He hung up and looked at Claire. "That was Agent Reeves. They've arrested 4 more people connected to Westfield, including the base commander at Fort Hamilton." Claire's stomach dropped. "How deep does this go?" "Deeper than we thought." The general's voice was grim. Westfield wasn't working alone. He had a network. People in DOD, CIA, private contractors. All of them profiting from operations that should never have existed. "And they're all going down?" "Reeves says yes, but it's going to take time. Months, maybe years." Claire nodded. "As long as they don't get away with it." "They won't." The general's voice was firm. "Not this time." 2 days later, Claire stood in a small examination room at Pinehurst, watching as a veterinary surgeon checked Ranger's stitches. The dog was awake now, alert, his eyes tracking Claire's every movement. "He's doing remarkably well," the vet said. "Another week and he'll be back to full strength." Claire knelt beside the exam table. Ranger's nose touched her hand, his tail thumping weakly. "Hey, boy," she murmured. "You gave us a scare." The dog's eyes were intelligent, knowing. "He's been asking for you," the vet said with a smile. "Well, as much as a dog can ask." Claire scratched behind Ranger's ears. "I missed you too." The door opened. Danny walked in, moving slowly but steady. "Can I?" she asked, gesturing to the dog. "He's yours," Claire said, stepping back. Danny approached, tears streaming down her face. Ranger's tail went wild. He tried to stand, but the vet held him down gently. "Easy, boy. You're still healing." Danny buried her face in Ranger's fur, sobbing. "I thought I lost you." The dog whined, licking her face. Claire felt her own eyes burn. She turned away, giving them privacy. Outside, the general was waiting. She needed that. Yeah, so did he. They stood in comfortable silence. "What's next for you?" the general asked. Claire thought about it. "I don't know yet. I have the congressional testimony in 2 weeks. After that," she shrugged, "I'll figure it out. You could come work for me. I need people I can trust." Claire looked at him. "Doing what?" "Whatever you want. Training, consulting. Hell, you could run my security detail if you wanted. I'm not going back into that world. It doesn't have to be that world. It could be something new." Claire considered it, then shook her head. "I appreciate the offer, but I think I need to find my own path." The general nodded. "Fair enough. But if you change your mind, you'll be the first to know." A week passed. Claire spent most of it at Pinehurst, recovering. Her wound was healing. The nightmares were less frequent, and slowly she started to feel like herself again. Porter visited twice, bringing updates on the investigation. Westfield was cooperating, giving up names in exchange for a reduced sentence. The network was unraveling. Dozens of arrests, millions of dollars seized. Justice, slow but inevitable. On the 8th day, Claire received a call from Agent Reeves. "We need to talk," Reeves said. "In person." Claire met her at a diner 20 miles from Pinehurst. Reeves was already there, a cup of coffee cooling in front of her. "What's going on?" Claire asked, sliding into the booth. Reeves pulled out a folder. "We found something. In Westfield's files." Claire's pulse quickened. "What?" "Evidence that someone else was involved in the Mosul operation. Someone who knew about the 8 soldiers, who knew they'd be captured, who authorized Westfield to let it happen." Claire's blood ran cold. "Who?" Reeves opened the folder. Inside was a photo. A man in his 60s, distinguished, wearing a suit. Senator Gregory Hale, chairman of the Armed Services Committee. Claire felt the floor tilt. "Are you sure?" "We have emails, phone records, financial transactions." Reeves's voice was hard. He was running illegal black ops through Westfield, using them to gather intelligence for his own political gain. "Does anyone else know?" "Just you and me, for now." Reeves leaned forward. "But when this goes public, it's going to be a firestorm, and you're going to be at the center of it." Claire's hands shook. "What do you need from me?" "Your testimony. Everything you remember about the mission, about the orders you received, about Westfield's involvement. And Hale, we'll handle him. But we need your statement on record first." Claire nodded. "When?" "Now." They spent the next 3 hours going through everything. Claire answered every question, relived every moment, and when it was over, she felt drained. "Thank you," Reeves said. "I know this isn't easy." "It never is." Reeves stood. "One more thing. When we arrest Hale, it's going to make national news. Your name is going to be everywhere. Are you ready for that?" Claire thought about it. About 6 years of hiding, of being invisible. "No," she said honestly, "but I'm done running." Reeves smiled. "Good, because the world needs to know what you did." 2 weeks later, Claire stood outside a congressional hearing room in Washington. The hallway was packed with reporters, cameras, microphones. They shouted questions as she passed, but Claire kept her eyes forward. Inside, the room was formal, severe. Senators sat in a semicircle, their faces neutral. Senator Hale was not among them. He'd been arrested that morning. Claire took her seat at the witness table, raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth. And then she began. She told them about Mosul, about the mission, about the 8 soldiers left behind, about Westfield's orders, about the cover-up that had lasted 6 years. She didn't hold back, didn't soften the details. And when she finished, the room was silent. The committee chair, a woman Claire didn't recognize, leaned forward. "Captain Hayes, on behalf of this committee and the United States government, I want to apologize for the way you were treated, for the injustice you endured, for the years you spent in hiding." Claire's throat tightened. "Your testimony today has exposed a corruption that goes to the highest levels of our military and government," the chair continued. "And because of your courage, we will ensure it never happens again." Claire nodded, unable to speak. "Thank you for your service and for your sacrifice." The hearing ended. Outside, the media frenzy was worse, but this time Claire didn't avoid them. She stopped, faced the cameras. "Do you have a statement?" a reporter shouted. Claire thought about it, about everything she'd been through, everything she'd lost, everything she'd gained. "I do," she said quietly. The crowd quieted. 6 years ago, I made a choice that saved 7 lives and cost 8. I've lived with that choice every day since. The guilt, the regret, the wondering if I could have done something different." She paused. "But I've learned something. You can't change the past. You can only decide what to do with it. And I've decided that instead of hiding from my mistakes, I'm going to own them, learn from them, and use them to become better." A reporter raised her hand. "What's next for you, Captain?" Claire smiled. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." She walked away. 3 months later, Claire stood in the parking lot of Riverside General, the place where it had all started, where she'd been invisible, dismissed, overlooked. She walked through the entrance, past the trauma bays, past the nurse's station where she'd spent so many shifts. Linda Garrett saw her coming. Her face registered shock, then something that might have been respect. "Claire." "Linda. I heard what happened. What you did." "Yeah." Garrett stepped closer. "I owe you an apology. I should have listened to you, should have backed you up." "You were doing your job." "I was covering my ass." Garrett's voice was firm. "And you deserved better." Claire nodded. "Thank you. Are you coming back?" Claire thought about it, about the long nights, the chaos, the patients who needed her. "No," she said, "but I wanted to say goodbye. Properly." Garrett extended her hand. Claire shook it. "What will you do?" Garrett asked. "I'm opening a clinic in Pinehurst for veterans, people who've been through trauma, people who need someone who understands." Garrett's face softened. "That sounds perfect." "I hope so." Claire turned and walked out. Outside, the general's SUV was waiting. He'd offered to drive her back. Claire climbed in. Beside her, Danny sat with Ranger's head in her lap. "Ready?" the general asked. "Yeah." They drove north. The landscape opened up. Fields and forests, small towns with churches and diners. And for the first time in 6 years, Claire felt like she was moving forward. Not running, not hiding, just living. Her phone buzzed, a text from Porter. Westfield got 15 years. Hale got 20. "Justice served." Claire smiled and typed back. "Good." She pocketed the phone and looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. And Claire realized something. She'd spent 6 years trying to disappear, trying to erase the person she'd been. But you can't erase your past. You can only decide what to do with it. She could carry the guilt, the regret, the weight of impossible choices. Or she could carry the knowledge that she'd done her best, that she'd saved lives, that she'd stood up when it mattered, not because she was perfect, but because she was human. And being human meant making mistakes, learning from them, and trying again. Claire leaned back in her seat. She didn't know what came next, didn't know where she'd end up. But for the first time in a long time, she was okay with that, because the future wasn't something to fear. It was something to build. One choice at a time. 6 months later, Claire stood in front of a small building in Pinehurst. The sign above the door read, Hayes Veterans Clinic. It wasn't much. 3 exam rooms, a waiting area, a small office. But it was hers. The general had helped with funding. Danny had helped with design. Porter had helped navigate the bureaucracy. And now, on opening day, Claire stood inside and looked around. The first patient arrived at 9. A young man, maybe 25, missing his left leg below the knee. "I heard about you," he said, "about what you did. And I thought maybe you could help me too." Claire smiled. "I'll try." She led him to an exam room. And as she worked, checking his prosthetic, adjusting the fit, listening to his story, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not the kind imposed by orders or rank, but the kind you chose for yourself. That evening, as Claire locked up, she found the general waiting outside. "How was your first day?" he asked. "Good. Busy." "That's a good sign." They stood in comfortable silence. "Thank you," Claire said, "for everything. You don't need to thank me. You earned this. Still, I couldn't have done it without you." The general nodded. "Danny wants to volunteer here, during her summer break." Claire's chest tightened. "I'd like that." So would she. The general turned to leave, then paused. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just a nurse who'd gotten lucky. But I was wrong." "About what?" "You weren't lucky. You were skilled, trained, disciplined." He met her eyes. "You were exactly who we needed, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." Claire felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you." The general smiled. "Welcome home, Captain." He left. Claire stood alone in the parking lot, watching the sun dip below the horizon, and she thought about the journey that had brought her here, the mistakes, the pain, the running, but also the courage, the redemption, the choice to stand up instead of hide. She'd spent 6 years invisible, but now she was seen, not as a hero, not as a failure, just as Claire. And that was enough. Because strength wasn't about being perfect. It was about being human, about making impossible choices and living with them, about falling down and getting back up, about knowing when to fight and when to forgive. Claire had fought, and she had forgiven. Not Westfield, not the system, but herself. And in that forgiveness, she'd found something she'd been searching for all along: peace. She walked to her car, climbed in, and drove home. Tomorrow, there would be more patients, more stories, more people who needed help. But tonight, Claire allowed herself to rest, to breathe, to simply be. Because after 6 years of running, she'd finally found what she was looking for. Not in a place, but in a choice. The choice to stop hiding, to stop apologizing, to stop being afraid of who she was. Captain Evelyn Hayes, now just Claire, a nurse, a veteran, a survivor, and most importantly, someone who'd learned that the hardest battles aren't fought with weapons. They're fought with truth, with courage, with the willingness to look yourself in the mirror and accept both the light and the darkness. Claire had done that, and she'd come out the other side, not unscathed, but whole. The end